Jess McMullin. Y antes de empezar les voy a platicar un poco sobre él, porque si no, no terminamos esta mañana. Él es fundador de Center for Citizen Experience, una consultora dedicada a la transformación de los servicios públicos y la formulación de políticas a través de la innovación en el diseño. Ha impartido decenas de conferencias sobre la experiencia de usuario, el pensamiento de diseño y la transformación organizacional. También trabaja capacitando y asesorando a equipos de diseño públicos para cultivar estas capacidades al interior del gobierno. Y el día de hoy lo tenemos aquí, lo recibimos como se merece con su conferencia The Experience of Information. Fuerte el aplauso para Jess McMullin.
All right. We'll see if you get to see me fall off the stage. But, and there we go. So thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so excited to be part of the Congress and to be able to actually share some things about my experience in working in the public sector and in making the public sector work better for people. I'm especially thankful for Ite in inviting me and for all the team that has put on the conference. Everybody has been wonderful. And I'm really grateful for, grateful for all the work that has been done so that we could be here today. And I'm thankful for you. I'm grateful that you're here and for the important work that you're doing. So thank you. In the world, we're seeing more success in the work that we do. We're seeing more success in open government, in transparency, in innovation, in handling private information. So in British Columbia, where I do a lot of my work, we're publishing resources to help public servants innovate better. You're familiar with the work of open data in the United States, in Canada, in the UK. Closer to home, the work of Ite with transparency. And Open Data Mexico has had lots of great events lately where they're encouraging people to use government data in order to create new products and services that can help citizens have a better life. In Brazil, there's something called Campus Party. Have you heard of Campus Party before? So Campus Party is a tech festival. So this is a photo from last year in Brazil. It actually is the largest tech festival in Latin America, one of the largest in the world. And so about 10,000 technologists and hackers and innovators come together and to work on new things. Some of those new things are looking at the latest video games, but part of them are actually participating in civic hackathons in order to build new applications on government data. And I found out yesterday, this has happened in Mexico before in the federal region around Mexico City, but I found out yesterday that it's actually coming here to Zapopan next year. So there'll be about 10,000 people coming together here to actually work together on improving how government works. And if we look at the Open Data Census, this is a website that tracks how people are publishing open data, what different governments are doing throughout the world. And this is what it looks like. There's a lot going on here. A lot of things are happening in the world, and it's exciting to see. It's exciting to see the kinds of things that are going on as people share more information and release more data into the world. And so in the work of innovation and transparency in open government, we're finding success. This is sometimes what success looks like, though. We're actually creating new kinds of information. And this is just like the rest of the world, where we're creating more and more information the more and more successful we are. In fact, you almost could think of our work in transparency and open government to be taking the iceberg and actually elevating it. We want to take that data that's been hidden or that's underneath, and we want to share it. We want to create more of it. So congratulations. You're seeing success in doing this work. I don't think the race is over yet, but we're seeing some success in moving along. and that we're actually on pace to make a big difference in government and in how people relate to government. But there's always challenges that come with success. And I'm going to talk about one in particular today. How does all this information feel to users? So we're successful, we create more information. What's that like for regular, everyday people? I have a brief demonstration to show you. So I videotaped myself searching for government information to show you what it feels like. And here it is. So far, so good. But just wait. I got so much information that it was overwhelming, that it feels like I'm being flooded by all the information that is available to me. I felt like maybe I was a cat taking a bath, an angry cat. And that when we have information overload, it causes confusion and frustration for people. So in the very success that we have, we actually find a new challenge. And in fact, we have places like the White House saying we're going to stop creating new government websites. We need to actually, there's too many websites. We need to stop doing so much. Information overload actually reduces the value of our work. It reduces the value of information because it reduces the use of that information. If people are overwhelmed, then they won't be able to use it. And so what we want is for people to use that information, so we have to deal with that overload that they have. So how do we get more value from our information investments? All of you are working very hard to create better access and easier access to information. So how do we make sure that that effort returns the best on your effort? So we can look at an idea called value-centered design from business, of saying value really comes from the goals of the organization and the goals of people. And it's at the intersection of those things that we actually find real value. And that whatever we deliver, whether it's information or product or service, and however we get it there, whether that's through a website or through a mobile application or face-to-face, that it's really about finding that intersection. For information, we have to say, well, how does it get used? And that's what really creates value. So the key principle in understanding use is to understand the experience that people have with that information. We need to understand the experience in order to generate value. Oh. And here, Antonio, did that crash? Okay. Yeah, beautiful. There might be a button there that says restart. If there is, it would be great if you would press it. So, Francisco, is it starting up again? I'm going to keep talking while our wizards behind the scenes actually see if they can resurrect my computer. There's a reason I convinced my wife that I needed a new one, but it wasn't quite ready to come on this trip yet, unfortunately. But, so we'll see if I get to walk down the aisle and actually do my own troubleshooting. But thank you. So let's try this again. So we need to design for the experience of information, both in the policy that we create and in the actual implementation, in the things that we build, in the ways that we build them. So I'm going to tell you about 3 things today. So 3 things that can help us do better in providing a good experience with our information. First, we need to understand people. Second, we need to create structure. And third, we need to show context. So, understanding people. By understanding people, we can understand what's valuable to them. We can understand what should be our priorities because they reflect the priorities of people that we're serving. If our priority doesn't have any interest from anybody else, that might be okay, but it might not be the most valuable thing we could do. There's a practice, a discipline, called human-centered design. The idea that we design by focusing on people. And if we apply that to our information projects, if we focus on people, we also find focus for our information. We have a meaning for that information when we look at the people and to say, what is it that they actually care about? What do they do? So there's three things we need to look at when we're trying to understand people. So who, what, and why, market and design research, and creating common ground. So who, what, and why? Who is it that's using the information? What do they want to do with it? And why is that important to them? We don't want to look just at a big crowd. We need to understand specifically what matters to people. We have to actually say, oh, it's these things, these connections, these pieces of information that are going to make a difference for this person. If we don't understand that, it's pretty hard to decide what we should focus on ourselves. And so we end up wasting a lot of time and effort and money if we go and we create something that doesn't really matter to anyone. So we have to understand people to do that. So to gain that insight, to understand those people, we have some tools that we can use. So we can use market research. You might be familiar with running focus groups, see? And also surveys, though maybe not for grocery stores. So focus groups and surveys can tell us a lot of things about people, but they can only tell us so much. There's another practice called design research. So design research draws on social sciences, like anthropology, as well as on product and service design to understand people in the world. It's kind of like a question of the jungle or the zoo. If you wanted to learn about a tiger, you can go to the zoo, or you can go to the jungle. Well, for government, this is the jungle. And it's not always at the front counter, it's sometimes behind the scenes too. There's a jungle inside our organizations. And especially if you're working in open government and transparency and innovation, you probably deal a lot with that jungle inside the organization as well. But we have to go there if we really want to understand what people need. I was working on a project about 10 years ago with and we were working to improve a hospital system's website. So it's the hospitals in my hometown in Canada. And so we had people come in to use the current website, and we asked them to find different things. So, well, here's a list of things. We gave them one at a time. Can you find this? Can you find this? And we had a young man, he was 29, he worked in the construction industry, and every single thing that we asked him to find, he failed. He could not find it. He would sometimes even swear under his breath while he was going through the website. Afterwards, we asked him, we said, how was that website? What did you think? And he said, that was great. I really liked it. It was an excellent website. But we just seen him fail miserably. What people tell us when we ask them, not always what they really do. There's a big difference. This is probably true in your own life too sometimes, as you think about what you say and what you do. But especially when we're trying to understand people and how to set priorities. And that's why design research can help. In British Columbia, they implemented a new driver's license and healthcare card this year. So the driver's license and the healthcare card came together in one thing. So it's one piece of plastic in your wallet. To prepare for that, we actually went and talked to dozens of people throughout the province about ID and how they used ID in their lives and what that meant to them. And that helped us to make that transition a lot smoother than what we were doing before. When we were looking at how employees used information, not just citizens, but inside our organization, we did the same thing. We went and visited dozens of people and looked at how did they actually use information inside inside government. And looking at transit to say, how do people actually use the transit system? How do they make decisions and how do they make choices in order to use that information that we would publish about it? And it's not always going out and observing people like we're on a safari in the jungle. We need to also bring people in to work with government and to design together, to co-design, to be able to actually create better solutions and to really innovate. We don't just need to design for people, we can design with people. And that will give us more powerful value and priorities. When we go out in the world and we gain this insight, we can then use that to create common ground, a shared understanding of what people need to do and what those priorities are. Because when we come together in our teams, in our departments, in our organizations, then we can do our work much better when we have a common understanding. We have a touchstone, a way to have everybody share the same ideas. So we do this research, and then we look for patterns in that. We can start to do things like create profiles of people to say, this is what people need. This is what matters to this kind of person. We can map what their journey is like, what's their experience like over time, and actually show these are the different areas where we need to focus as an organization. And we can create models that can show what is it that we need to do on the bottom, and what is it that people need to do across the top. So at the top here, and I know you can't read it, but that's okay. These are the specific activities that people are interested in carrying out. And at the bottom, in the blue, are the specific things that this particular department did to support the people in those activities. So we could make sure that what we were doing lined up with what mattered to people. So we can actually say, this is what people need to do, this is what they care about, and this is the features and functions and content, this is the information that we have to do that. And then we're making a decision based on what matters to people. And can actually help resolve some of our policy conflicts. Well, maybe you don't have policy conflicts in Mexico, but in Canada, that sometimes we have policies that seem to be saying different things in the same organization. By focusing on people, we can help straighten out some of those things. We can bring more alignment to our policy efforts. We can actually see what the connections are between those different policies based on our insight into people and draw connections between policy and actual implementation and service delivery. Because I actually have never seen a policy document that by itself created an outcome. It's actually the implementation of policy that really ends up making a difference in people's lives. And so understanding people can help with all of that. So, understanding people, knowing who, what, and why, gaining insight and going beyond market research to understand people's behavior and expectations, and modeling needs so that we can have a clear connection between policy, implementation, and outcomes. Number 2, create structure. Why do we need structure? Well, structure gives confidence. Confidence happens when we can make predictions about the future and they're true. So, my prediction of my PowerPoint presentation was that it would always work. And then I was a little bit less confident when it didn't because my prediction was wrong, right? You feel that every day. You expect something to happen, and it doesn't. You feel less confident. When people use information, the same thing happens. They make predictions about the future, and we can help them be right by giving them structure. So there's 3 kinds of structure I want to talk about: metadata, navigation, and thinking about information as a service. So metadata, you guys know what metadata is? No? Yes? Only the nerds? Okay. All right, so metadata is the information about the information. So in a library, how do you find a book on the shelf? So with the computer, what about a long time ago, before computers? Yeah, the card catalog, right? Like this. So you had to look up about the book to be able to find it. And you can look at the catalog online now at the computer, but that is the metadata that lets you find the book that you need. We need to provide the same kind of description about our information so that people can use it. Now, that happens in all kinds of ways. So this is actually information about a research project about landlord and tenant disputes. But we were able to actually look at these are the most common keywords in that information. So that helped us understand better what was happening in that particular process. When you start to structure information, you can actually structure it really, really consistently, so consistently that a machine can understand it, so that a computer can take it and do something with it. And open data is all about providing this machine-readable data so that somebody can use it in their application. Their application can reach out and talk to your data source and then use it. So this is actually the transit schedule for the train for BART in San Francisco. And so it's actually available in real time for people to be able to create transit schedules. And so there's dozens of different transit apps that are built on top of this data. But we don't want to structure it just for machines, so that's not very interesting. We want to actually establish an information architecture. Just like we need an architecture for a building, we need an architecture for information that can help people to work with that information. And that helps them to navigate that information. So we see that structure can then actually show up for people to say, how do they actually manage to go and work through the complex information that we provide? So I'm not sure how many of you have used Amazon's US website. I don't use it that often, but I went there this last week for Cyber Monday. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things you can do on the Amazon homepage. But they have to focus not just on the structure, not on making it machine readable, but by making it easy for people to use, because they lose money if they don't. I actually worked for a different internet company in the United States, and when we would make a change to the homepage, if we said, oh, we think this is a better idea, we're going to test it. We're going to show the new version to some people and the old version to some people. Every time that they would do that A/B testing to compare the new version that may be and the old version or the current version, they would lose $250,000 US to run that test for a day for almost everything, because most of the choices that they made, they thought, this is a new one, but most of them actually didn't work that well when you actually put it in front of people. So they lose a lot of money by being wrong about navigation. For us in government, fortunately, we don't lose money every time that we get navigation wrong. But maybe we'd pay more attention to it. Maybe it would be easier to get some priority in our organization if we did. But we have to be able to navigate that information. And not just on websites or on apps, but to navigate the whole system of government. What we're doing when we provide information isn't just providing information, we're providing a way for people to engage as citizens and to be active participants in government. But to do that, they have to understand government as a system, as a whole. And so we can think about how information fits into the whole system of government. And the way that I like to think about that is thinking about information as a service that we provide to people, just like we would provide other services. When we think about it that way, then we start to think about it not just about content, not just about data feeds, not just about APIs or machine-readable information, but we start to think about it as a service for people that they use. So here, this is from a project where we were thinking about that new services card in British Columbia, where the healthcare card and the driver's license can be in one now. So we didn't just show the card, we started to say, well, what does it do in people's lives? We could tell stories and create models and prototypes to actually say, this is what happens when this kind of information is accessible in someone's life. And then we could actually map that and model it to say, here's what that looks like if we're going to implement it, if we're going to actually change our business processes and our technical infrastructure and our technical systems in order to support this kind of experience with information. If we're really good, then maybe we'll end up with something like Zapopan's doing. I'm not sure how many of you traveled, come here to the conference today, but in Zapopan, one of the districts of Guadalajara, that they are doing amazing, incredible work in thinking about information as a service. And I was here last year, and I went to Plaza del Sol, the big mall, and the thing I was most excited about was seeing this kiosk. It's a super kiosk that provides access for information by telephone, by computer. Then there's the kiosk where you can actually make payments, and the printer so you can get licenses and permits. And that this provides a much easier way for people to access information and services from government because they're thinking about government as a system and information as a system and how it fits in people's lives. Before this program was implemented, it would take somebody 2 hours to drive sometimes from the furthest part of Zapopan to where there was a city office. And now, over 300 neighborhoods are within 3 kilometers of a kiosk that they can conduct that. So they don't have to take a vacation day to go in and to conduct business with the city. So I think this is actually some of the best work in the world. I spent my afternoon there yesterday learning more about it. So it's certainly things that you're teaching all of us about how we can do better with information. So, to create structure, we need to create metadata, the information about the information, or the data about the data. We need to provide a way to navigate that for people, not just for machines. And we need to think about information as a service. So, 3, showing context so that we can make meaning. It's context that helps us understand the world. That's what defines meaning. So for these flowers, how tall do you think they are? Or how big are they? Somebody just tell me, how big do you think they are? That big? Show me with your, this big? This big? Okay. They are about 2.5 meters. This is a winter festival. This is my family here. But yes, so the context matters. Until we have the context, we don't know what something means. It's very hard for for people when they're using information to know what it means without a context. And if we don't give them a context, they will make one up. And every senior government executive that I've ever worked with hates it when citizens make up the context. Because a lot of times they're right, a lot of other times, well, it's not always right. And so we want them to have the right context so they make the best use of that information. So how do we do that? We need to explain our own policy priorities, what's important to us. Remember when we talked about value-centered design? Value comes from what happens in the organization and our priorities and the priorities of people. It's not just about people, it's about what we care about as well. But we have to communicate that. We have to use visualization, and we tell stories. So imagine if traffic lights all turned on like this. How would driving be if the lights were red and yellow and green? It's not very clear priority then, and we would have problems, and I would be scared to go on the road. So when you have a preference, then you need to tell people. So we saw that actually in the United States. You may or may not have followed what's happening with healthcare in the United States. But when the Affordable Care Act was created, Obama said to Congress, "You bring me something." And he didn't put out what his preferences were very much. He left it in the hands of Congress. And when you have that many people trying to come up with a decision, it's hard to come up with something that is simple. And they didn't. But if you have a preference, you want to tell people. Now, in Alberta, in Canada, where I'm from, energy is a big part of our economy. So we need to think about, well, what's our preference? How do we deal with energy? What do we want to be doing? What is our policy priority in government? How do we communicate what it is that matters to government, not just what matters to people, so that they can say, oh, I understand why you did that, or I understand what this information is doing for you. And so that helps provide context when we actually share our own policy priorities. Visual thinking is something that is tremendously powerful in communicating. A lot of policy is tied up in documents. It's tied up in written things that most citizens, if they hear about it, they cringe. They don't want to read a policy document. They want to go to a barbecue or to their children's soccer game or play soccer. They don't want to read a policy document. But we can actually confess, I think, that most of government people, we don't want to read policy documents either. That policy is important, but communicating can really be helped by using visual thinking, by actually saying, as well as the words, to have pictures or visual representation so we understand what matters. And this is about ideas. It's not about creating something that's beautiful, but it's actually saying, this is what matters. This is the idea that I have. Now, of course, we can make it beautiful. We call that an infographic. You might have seen some of these, where people will take information and actually present it in a visual way. It's easier to understand then. And that not only in doing infographics like this, but we can actually visualize data. There's data visualization algorithms and tools that let us actually work with our information and our data in order to visualize it, to increase the understanding and the context that people have. And lastly, to tell stories. So I'm going to tell you a story. How many of you are familiar with Code for America? All right. So Code for America is a nonprofit that's headquartered in San Francisco. What Code for America does is people volunteer for a year to take a leave of absence from their job or whatever, and they work for a very low salary, for a nonprofit salary for that year, as a Code for America fellow. And teams of usually 3 fellows are assigned to a city. So cities apply and say, we would like to work with Code for America. And Code for America brings in these teams of people in January and does some training with them. But these people are developers and designers who will then work with the city to create a new application in that year at no cost to the city. And so this is the story of Code for America in New Orleans in 2012. So this is the team, Civic Industries. I talked with Alex Pendel there on the left. And New Orleans had a problem. So blight is a problem in many areas. These houses are abandoned and they're falling down. People can report them and identify that blight, and the city then works to clean it up. So City Hall knew what it wanted. It said, we want to make it more efficient for people to report and to get that report of a blighted property to come into City Hall. But the team went out and talked with people in the different neighborhoods around New Orleans. And communities were already mapping blight themselves. And the problem that they had was not making it more efficient, but the real problem was feedback. They'd report a property, and then they had no idea what happened. To get an answer of where it was in the status of that property, they had to call 311, and the 311 operator had to go find out by calling a whole bunch of other people, and it took 2 to 3 weeks to get a response. So the team said the real problem is feedback. It's not making it more efficient. When they went out and did user research, they actually unlocked insight that let them focus on a better opportunity. And so they innovated and created a new application that shows the status of any property in the city that has been reported for blight and lets you report a property itself so you can see where it is in that process. So that's our third thing, showing context. We need to explain our own policy priorities so that people understand where we're coming from and they can find the intersection of value with us. We can make that easier for people when we use visual thinking and when we tell stories, our own stories of what matters. So, understanding people, creating structure, and showing context. When we do those 3 things, we'll be creating a better experience of information for the people that we serve, and we'll be getting a better return on our information investments because people will use it. We're going to get value for ourselves and meaning from the information that we provide. We're going to be able to manage that information flood. So you sit there with your fire hose, and you're not going to just spray the information at people. You're going to think about the experience of information. So who will navigate? So my helpers at the back, Francisco, hola, are you ready? Yeah. You're ready? Yeah. Okay. So who will help navigate? I need your help for this last story. Okay? You'll help? So, if you can get out your mobile phone, okay? Mobile phone. Find it. And if you can turn on a white screen or your flashlight. Okay. All right. And then I need you to help me count. Okay, do we have phones? I don't see very many phones over here. You have phones. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, now we're going to count together. 1, 2, 3. Look around. What do you see? I see stars. People used to navigate by the stars. And as we look here, I see the stars that are going to help people navigate the information that's coming from open government, from innovation, and from transparency. I'm honored to be in your presence. Thank you very much for the time that you've had here today. My name is Jess McMullin. I hope you keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Gracias y un fuerte aplauso de nuevo para despedir a Jess McMullin, que estuvo con nosotros. Excelente participación. Y queremos invitar a todas las personas que tengan preguntas, favor de levantar la mano. Les vamos a hacer llegar unos papelitos por cuestiones de tiempo, no las va a poder responder aquí, pero formulen su pregunta o comentario. Se los vamos a hacer llegar a Jess y él estará respondiéndolas y estarán publicándose en la página. ¿Monse, es así? En la página se van a estar publicando las respuestas para que estén al pendiente. Están las compañeras acercándoles los papelitos, por favor, para que hagan todas sus preguntas y comentarios. De nuevo, muchas gracias. Vamos a continuar con la inauguración. No se muevan de su lugar y gracias también a Jess por su participación.